What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So it's kind of insane. We are now on the last summit, at least until Motorfest does release, though. Do keep in mind there is obviously going to be more summits that are going to be available in the crew too. If I had to guess, they're most likely going to have older summits come back, and that way you can actually move those vehicles over to Motorfest in the future. But for this summit, guys, we have the Proto Lucky 1 Marble Edition. It's definitely going to be a pretty interesting looking car for that matter, and it's actually one of the last cars I actually thought they would add into like a summit, but it does turn out this thing is going to have a crazy body kit and a front splitter that can most likely be a snowplow in some crazy conditions. But overall, though, I have to admit this summit really was a great time. In gold, we have the McLaren Senna, which is obviously going to be some free parts, and then in silver, we have the blinking white lines underglow, which is blinking white lines. But moving over to this summit though, guys, it's also going to be a pretty nice mix of events. You also get to drive this car as well in this one event, which to be honest I feel like they picked a pretty interesting one considering the car is base level. With no pro settings, you're obviously not going to be insanely quick, so if you guys do see a lot of players getting higher times, they're most likely slipstreaming. That is unfortunately going to be the only way to do so. But moving over to the first event though is going to be a speed trap, and for this one, you guessed it, the Corvette Stingray is obviously going to be the car of the choice for basically everybody, and that's going to be for good reasoning because this thing is insanely fast though, and if you guys are looking to get crazy high speeds on this, do keep in mind the top speed of this car is like 411 or so miles an hour with a nitrochemist set, so if you are looking to go a tad faster than like 411 miles an hour, you will have to slipstream somebody to do so. And to be honest, I would say it's most likely not going to be worth it, at least for like 6 to 7,000 points. But moving over to the next skill is going to be a slalom. For this, guys, I decided to run the Ducati Panigale R. Do keep in mind if you guys have a score breaker set on one of your vehicles, you can basically use any of the cars of your choice on this because to be honest, salt flats is going to be one of the easier skills to do in this. So it's basically going to be like a big figure eight, and I did find a motorcycle to be insanely useful on this one. But moving over to an escape though, I would have to admit this one is by far going to be insanely annoying. So if you guys were wondering, by the way, you don't have to get like 100,000 yards on this one. If you are chasing some of the records though, you will most likely have to get a crazy high score. But for this, I would say you should be good around 155,000 points, most likely being around about 20,000 yards for that matter. So you won't have to go too insane on this escape, guys, but to be honest, the most annoying part about this is by far going to be the beginning. You're basically spinning a thing on a lottery machine because there are so many trees, and you basically have to hope you don't hit any, doing around 200 miles an hour down a mountain with a hypercar, which obviously makes no sense. So you could use something like a Chiron Super Sport. I actually found the Regera to be insanely good because it's going to be one gear, and I normally do run manual, so using something like this car though, I did notice it does tend to pick up speed faster, at least going down a mountain for that matter, so I would recommend trying that out. But moving over to the next event is going to be a hypercar race with the Senna. It's actually going to be the Hollywood race. I did have a great time with this one. Do keep in mind, guys, the McLaren Senna is actually one of the best hypercars in the game, at least when it does come to its overall stability and or handling, because let's be honest, some of the cars are actually really bad with how they do handle, like the Lamborghini Countach. That thing is an absolute nightmare. Like for example with this car, guys, the first time I did this event before I did adjust my settings, I was like, okay, well, you know what? This thing is obviously not going to be the best, so I could have jumped back into this event and most likely got a higher score, but I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, I could have did better on this one. Don't get me wrong, guys. To be honest, this run was actually terrible, and I by far could have jumped in and most likely got a higher score, but at the same time, I was like, you know what? Motorfest is basically coming out next week. Let's try to get a decent run with this car and actually show some of the flaws with it. The handling of this car, guys, and or like the handling model of the hypercar category really does show some of its flaws in this race, so I honestly cannot wait to jump into Motorfest just after doing that event. But moving over to the next event is going to be a street race, and for this you really can use basically any of the street cars of your choice though. I know a lot of them are going to be a great option for this, but for me, I once again decided to run the Porsche 911 Carrera 4S, which for me I would actually say is going to be on the underrated side. And the main reason why I say that is I do feel like this car is actually pretty good. Yes, it's not going to be like the fastest street car, but it really is going to be insanely fun to use, especially for these races and summits. And if you guys are running manual, do keep in mind it is an 8-speed, so you're most likely going to be shifting a lot more often. But moving over to the next event is going to be a hypercar race, and you also get to use the Proto Lucky one that's going to be the Platinum Reward. Do keep in mind, guys, this car is once again going to be base level with regular pro settings on it, so I would not expect this car to turn that great, and to be honest, you can see that in some areas, but overall though, the South Trip is going to be a pretty simple race. All you will have to do is keep your speed up as much as possible. Do keep in mind, if you guys do want a crazy high score, you're most likely going to have to slipstream, and the reason for that is this car being insanely low leveled. But moving over to the next event is going to be a drag race. I don't know why, guys, but for some odd reason, I'm not the biggest fan of the drag races in the Crew 2. Like, it's not that I hate them, I just, for some odd reason, am not like the biggest fan of actually doing these races. But one thing I have to admit, though, in Motorfest, I love the way the drag cars feel. And if you guys were wondering, if you did not get a chance to use them, they are definitely going to be a lot different than they are in the Crew 2. So I really can't wait to use the drag cars in Motorfest. But moving over to the last event, though, you will be able to use a touring car in one of the hypercar races. One shall remains going to be from the recent DLC. So for this, guys, I did have a great time. Now do keep in mind, though, if you're looking for the fastest touring car for this, it is easily going to be the Saleen S7R. That car does around 270 plus. It is by far going to be easily one of the fastest touring cars in the Crew 2. So for me, I actually decided to not use it. Makes sense, doesn't it? So I did decide to use the Acura NSX. Sure, this car is not going to be like the fastest touring car in the Crew 2, but my goodness, guys, the NSX is by far going to be a great competitor, especially against something like the Saleen S7R. But if you guys are once again looking for the fastest car, the Saleen is by far the best option. I really do love the way the NSX does handle. Like, it is a great car and can easily get a great time on this. But overall, though, guys, I do think a lot of players are going to most likely like the Summit. If you are wondering what are the most annoying events in this, for that I would probably say the Countach Hypercar race, and by far the escape up here is definitely going to be the most frustrating. But overall, I do think a lot of players are going to like this one. If you guys have any questions at all, let me know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more insight.
you